KLTV sound check, KLTV sound check.
Sure, I'll be glad to. No big long group of vouchers though this today, so.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday regular public meeting. Let's go ahead and start with the pledge. Those of you who are able to, please stand with me and pledge allegiance. Stand one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's go ahead and start with considering the minutes.
We've had a chance to review the minutes. I didn't uncover any errors or omissions. I would move adoption as presented.
Let's see how we're doing with any hands up. Any questions from the audience? Apparently not. So I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of adopting the minutes?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Motion passes.
Today's consent agenda include a number of letters from this board and one to this board. The letters include appointments to the Veterans Advisory Board, reappointing Steve Hogue and Jim Stonier. It also has two letters congratulating Alice Millward for her time on our Parks and Recreation Board, and Ray Van Tongeren thanking him for his time on the Homeless Housing Task Force. The letter that we have received is dated August 1st from Darren Ullman, who's the Executive Director of the Cowlitz Humane Society, and advising us as per our contract that they will no longer be offering animal control services for the county as of January 1st. So that's going to be a challenge for us and the other local governments since the Humane Society is pulling out from that agreement. The voucher, we have received vouchers from Drainage Improvement District number 1 to the tune of just under $10,500. And we've received revised vouchers for Drainage Improvement District number 1. That was originally approved in May for just under $2,000. And that concludes our consent calendar for today. Mr. Chairman, I move approval of today's consent agenda.
We have someone coming up to speak. Before we do that, maybe this is a good time. Let me see. We had a district commissioner district discussion last week.
Yeah.
That may play.
It'll be on next week's.
It'll be on next
Right.
week's. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a real problem with letter E, letter from this Darren, whatever his name is, about them not providing any more services regarding this animal control.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's gonna be a free for all then? With all these homeless people and their dogs?
Well, under state law, that is the responsibility of local governments, part of the public health mandate. We have traditionally contracted, most of the cities and the county have contracted with the Humane Society to pick up dead animals and pick up the strays and with animals that are abandoned, causing problems and those things. They have been doing it for years. Now, we were a little bit surprised when we got the letter. The contract does allow them to give us 6 months notice to pull out. So that's yeah.
I'm sorry, but that contract should not be pulled.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that people like me who do food drives for the Humane Society, now we have to let those poor animals that get dropped off with no place to go, and Nothing, no, this needs to be,
If I can interrupt you, the issue isn't should the Humane Society be able to pull a contract or not? You're really asking us not to ignore that, not to ignore the animals and to proceed to find a substitute. And we are going to do that. We just got the note late last week or late last week. And this is the first time in any public session that we've even shown that.
because of the fact that since I've been coming, they've been bitching and moaning and griping and belly aching about the homeless problems, what these poor animals that these homeless people have and the ones that are dropped off at the shelter get ignored. So you either need to find another place for these animals, and you need to find somebody that's not going to pull a rug out from under your feet.
So, the letter does say that they will continue sheltering animals. So people who go to the Humane Society will be able to drop off the animals. It's the other kind where they go out and pick up the carcasses, track the animals down.
It's the street patrol.
Right. So
I'm
That-
sorry that they should not pull this
Yeah.
at all, because I have helped rescue more than one abandoned animal in the WSU building, the old, whatever it used to be,
Mhm.
because people dropped the small animals in that.
Yeah,
I rescued almost a dozen in the last year and a half.
we've already agreed with you, and I think the majority of the public would agree with you. We will do something about this element of the Humane Society. But I do remind you, let's focus on the problem, which is the one you described. It isn't that we should keep the Humane Society as
Then
prisoners.
the start with and get rid of this clown. That's to start with, and put somebody in charge that wants to do a complete job, including the services.
I'm sorry, who do you want to get rid of?
This Darren, whatever,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but as an animal lover that sees all this on a daily walk where animals are killed.
We
and run
understand
over
that.
And left, get rid of this guy. And that's all I got to say about it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Before we proceed, I was going to say on the comments, we have an open comment section coming up. Our schedule today is very light schedule. I encourage you to bring up comments of a general nature at that time. And specifically, the comment now was correctly addressed to an item on the agenda that we are discussing. So, but in the past, we've had sometimes people feeling that there is no order. There actually is order. Okay, let me leave it at that. And we have the other comments on the motion agenda. I don't see any hands. The clerk will be sure to remind us that we have to keep the public apprised of issues with the Humane Society. So let's go to the.
So let me
the
just
vote?
add,
Okay.
last week, several of us attended the ribbon cutting at the 911 center over on Ocean Beach Highway. And that was about the first time that there was an opportunity to discuss having received this letter. I think that was the second. And it was interesting because folks from the sheriff's office, KPD, Kelso Police, Long Beach Police had already started putting their heads together to say, you know, how are we going to work together to come up with an alternative to make sure that animal control is still a service that's provided. So I know people are working on that, and we'll get some kind of alternative.
Excellent. I was going to ask you what your latest
Right.
thoughts or explorations were. At this point, we have a motion on the table to adopt the consent agenda. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. The motion does pass. Now let's go to the motion items.
Good morning, Commissioners. Will Tosted, Facilities Maintenance. So on the contract today, motion for award is a on-call and maintenance contractor, Northwest Controls. They were the sole bidder. This would help with our HVAC issues and give us priority when we're having HVAC issues. As you guys are aware, we have HVAC issues in almost every one of our buildings. So our maintenance guys will still continue to do filters, sheaves, belts, but any mechanical on that is what this contract's for.
So the amount is not to exceed $100,000.
Correct.
Is this a new contract? We've not used these folks before, or have we been calling them in and paying a premium when they show up?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've used them before. When we have mechanical, currently, we'll go through a list. If we're having a mechanical issue, who could respond first? It's approved contractors on the small works roster, which is the MRSC list. Northwest Controls has got several contracts with us from the past. And coincidentally, 10, 15 years ago, I think 2 separate times, they were also a maintenance contractor for us, for previous management. Yeah, Portland area, so local.
What's the duration of the contract?
I think this one's a year with options to move forward after that.
Okay, just in general, do you think or do you know that it is?
I don't know. I think Ashley would be able to answer that. She just raised her hand.
Ashley?
Oh, indeed. Let me check on that. Ashley, you're going to speak to us?
Oh, yep, I'm on here now. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
This contract is for 1 year with the option to extend for 1 additional year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we typically spend 100,000 a year, or this is a whole new program to try and avoid what we've seen?
Correct. This is a whole new program. That amount that we spend each year varies. We haven't had this mechanical contractor or a maintenance on call for several years. Like I said, it bounces between contractor to contractor. This would give us priority for when we have these heating and cooling issues and get someone in here immediately, rather than going through the phone list.
So are they going to spend 100,000?
I can't predict that.
How do we pay them on an hour, on a time and materials?
Yeah.
And so how many hours has gone into the 100,000?
That's a good question.
Ashley?
I'm not really sure how many hours they were anticipating when we made this. This was just the dollar amount that we estimated based on old contracts and how many times we've had previous HVAC in to help do the work. And this is a not to exceed. This is up to, but we will, like Will said, we don't really know if it will reach that amount, but this is just a buffer for us.
Okay, this is where my mind goes on this. It's if we are paying $100 an hour and I ignore for the moment the cost of materials, I'm looking there at 1,000 hours, and I know that's way too many hours. So I'm trying to rationalize things out. But at this point, let me turn it over to the public.
You said something that kind of piqued my interest. You said you only got 1 responder. Well, we have Intech, we have Denali, we have other people around here. Who did you actually send the bids out to?
Ashley could probably answer that a little bit better, but it was sent to all locals as well. That's just the only contractor that we got the bid from.
Did anybody follow up to find out why they didn't bid?
It was based on scheduling, for the most part. It was scheduling and then, just the being the on-call and having a certain window for emergencies. But it did go to several local, it went to Apex. It looks like Capital Heating and Cooling was in there. I've got the list in front of it. It went to Denali, it went to Intech, JH Kelly, JRT Mechanical. It went to several local contractors.
Well, if we got a bunch of people, qualified people locally that are not bidding on it, that makes me suspicious of, do we have the right criteria? These people do these kind of things all the time.
Yeah, and I'm confident Northwest Controls will handle it.
So just an interesting perspective, you say Portland, okay, so we pay an hour, 2 hours worth of transport time every time you call them in rather than the local contractor that's here. So I don't know what your rate schedule is or any of that, because since you have a sole bidder, I'm all for rebidding with getting specific local people.
Dennis, did you want to comment?
Looks like Savannah has her hand raised.
Oh, Savannah Clement.
Hello, Savannah, go ahead. There you are.
It took a second. Good morning, everyone. Just to kind of jump in with Will and Ashley on this, the intent of this contract was to try to address some of these call-ins that we have with a lot of local agencies. The summer months, we experienced a lot of conflicts in scheduling because we didn't have a contract in place like this. With a lot of our units that were going down. So we're trying to kind of be proactive moving forward, knowing that we need to replace a lot of these units, and they are on our plan for our capital improvements. So we're just trying to get ahead of the game, not pay a premium price for an on-call service from anywhere from local to Portland, Vancouver area. We did the 100,000 because of our aging infrastructure, and we're not sure when things are going to break and to what magnitude they're going to break. Unfortunately, as far as costing this, we do put it in with our maintenance professional service line item. So in facilities, we do not break it down by each individual location. That is something we're looking to do moving forward. So unfortunately, the total cost on this professional service we don't have today. We can, of course, get that for you and the public. We can start working on that and having that for you if that's something you guys would like.
Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable. I should have done a little more homework pouring through the contract because there are unanswered questions, and a gentleman from the audience points out that what if my clock starts down in Portland someplace and stops when I get back, but I only spend a half hour, then we're going to get billed for maybe 3 hours for a half-hour job.
That might be something that Ashley and Will can address. It was my understanding that there is a satellite Northwest control service here locally. I don't know that we would be, relying on someone from Portland. Is that something that you can address, Ashley or Will?
Yeah, we can get that question answered.
Well, I think that makes sense to get us a little bit more information on that.
Sure.
Why don't we table this for a week? I
At
don't think
least,
we need to be
yes,
in a
thank
hurry
you.
to do
Yeah.
it right now.
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, and I don't understand why the local companies did not
My suspicion is what we've been seeing with a lot of local companies in the construction industry is this summer was extremely difficult for them scheduling. Now what that might look like next year, it could be a little bit more feasible. Maybe we would get a heightened interest if it was longer than 1 year. Maybe if we extended the contract terms out and provided a 2-year contract with the option to extend it, give them a little bit more footing, if that makes sense. It'd give them a time frame that was longer.
Yeah, and this is a non-exclusive contract.
Right, for on-call services, right, for specific to HVAC, yes, so it would
Right,
just be
so-
Northwest
So
Controls.
we could sign the contract and not spend a dime on it.
Correct.
Let's go ahead
Okay.
and table it
All
for a
right,
week.
yeah,
We can chew on it then like that, and maybe you can get back to us, and I'd really like to know things like expected markup on materials or something like that. And I don't know. I'd like to know a little more on the local companies. And please don't misunderstand. I think purchasing physical material from a local company often is preferred, but I think our obligation is to get the best deal for the county, even if it's buying from Wyoming. And of course, we've got goods we want to sell also outside of Cowlitz County. But when it comes to the rationale of transportation and things like that, we have to take the big picture into account.
Absolutely, no problem. We'll do a little bit more research and hopefully have some more information when we come back.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I
An
think,
interesting comment
oh, yes, I'm sorry, please.
is that when I hear somebody say that they aren't using people because they're busy and they go to someone that isn't busy, I always question that because I like to have busy contractors doing my work because I know they're engaged in being busy. People that are unbusy usually have a reason why they're not real busy.
Yeah, isn't the old adage, you want something done, find the most busy person in your staff and assign it to them?
Just to respond to that, I guess I want to clarify that it's not that we don't approach them because they're busy. We always approach them. Local contractors, we get always by standard 3 bids from local contractors. So it's not that we wouldn't approach them because they're too busy. It's usually that is their response in the event of an emergency HVAC situation. So if it's something we can plan out, that is definitely a lot easier to secure a local company. It's usually these last minute, need them here as soon as possible types of contracts that the locals sometimes won't respond to. So just to want to make sure that I clarified that for you.
And I'd like to clarify that as well. They are a busy contractor. They have several large contracts. They did a chiller for us, $350,000 project. I know another contract that they got was HVAC at the Moda Center. So they're a busy contractor.
Okay,
Well, I guess on that note, my question is, I assume that they're probably just as busy as local contractors are. And if local contractors are struggling with being able to work in maintenance and repairs on your schedule, is there something in this contract that says you have an exclusive guaranteed same day response? Or if they're too busy, they're going to put you off for 3 days like a local contractor is? What guarantees a response in a guaranteed period of time?
Yeah, and I'll have to look into that in the contract as well. I don't have that exact answer. But in conversations when going out to bid, it was assumed that whoever got this contract was going to give us priority and be here within a couple hours, I believe. So.
Okay, so your belief is you got a
Couple hours
couple hour
response time.
turnaround.
Yep.
Okay, that'd be great.
Oh,
Okay.
excuse me. The bid documents actually specify it is a maximum of 3-hour call out for emergencies and maximum 2 business days for regular services.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't,
That concludes our business for today, right?
Yeah, well,
Other than-
hopefully
other than the
not.
public hearing.
Yeah, let's go ahead and open the general comment section for the public. And again, this is a section where you can comment about anything. Hopefully you'll take into account that people do view this and you want to be as specific and as succinct as you possibly can with a maybe even an action statement or request. But before I do that, there are a couple of things I'd like to do. One of them is to remind people that the Tuesday meeting is probably the central meeting of the week, but we have important meetings Monday and Wednesday also. Furthermore, the Tuesday meeting is the only meeting that is broadcast by KLTV. In any event, all the meetings are available on our at our website work your way through the commissioners section and you'll find it. We're also live streaming on YouTube. So there are a lot of options. Then maybe you could put that one slide up. Now, this is a step a little bit out of the ordinary, and I'm doing that because I know we have a little bit of time, and there are some key issues that I think helps the public understand things. For example, a blank screen always, no, never mind. I can't make something up extemporaneously there. So we talk about a lot of things that it almost sounds like, well, that's his idea, this idea. Well, there are not very many new ideas. Here's quotation by one of the most erudite people that I know who has grown up under very difficult times and yet is able to rise above the problems of Jim Crow laws, growing up in Harlem and growing up in the Carolinas, all kinds of issues. And this gentleman is absolutely a jewel. He's pretty old now. He's even older than I am. And I'm older than Dennis. He points out things that are just what you would call common sense, but we tend to ignore. And let me read you this quote. One of the most important reasons for studying history is that virtually every stupid idea that is in vogue today has been tried before and proved disastrous before, time and again. And that's Thomas Sowell, Sowell. He's at the Hoover Institute. That might upset some people because they have knee-jerk responses to things that might be in the Hoover Institute. Nevertheless, always look for the value in the message. Then I put the Seneca quote. Now, they're very much alike, but Seneca was sometime BC. I'm sorry, I don't remember quite when that was, but we have a span of 2,000 years, and it seems like while we can invent the iPhone and all kinds of other stuff, we can't seem to understand the most simple human concepts that apply. The reason the United States has been very successful is because the founding fathers understood this. We keep on saying democracy. We pledge to the republic, not to the democracy. And I could go on. But anyhow, that's I've taken up enough of your time. I urge you to learn from our ancestors, if nothing else. Thank you. Now, we still have time for public comment of a general nature, and I invite anybody and everyone up to speak. Except for that gentleman.
I appreciate the little presentation about we've done this all before. And that is a fact. You can just go down the line. You can see this over and over again. So that part is very true. Now, in studying history, you know, it's funny, history, a lot of people always think of history as being either getting an echo or, how's this better? Okay, maybe. We either get, as you go down through history, you know, you can pick these things apart, but you notice right away that things have always seemed to occur more or less in cycles. I'm just speaking along to that. But history occurs all around us every day. We're making history right now. And it's current history and very recent history that sometimes bears paying attention to. Now, we know that in the last years, we've had some really egregious proclamations, mandates, etc., foisted upon us against our will. We know that these things have turned out to be detrimental, not just to society, but to a lot of people's health. And so, in light of this study of history, current history, you know, I feel that we need to get an apology. And I kind of thought of this in a funny way some weeks ago, but I got to tell you honestly, the more people I talk to and the more I look into this stuff, it's like, I really feel like we should have an apology from the Board of Health, at least. And I don't know what hold you have over them. I've been trying to figure that part out before I got up here, but I don't know that you could direct them to do that. But the fact is, we know that masks didn't work. We knew it at the time. We said so, and it's proven. We said these shots were bad, and at the time, we refused to get them, most of us. And it's turned out that they were bad. And in just a case of the Johnson & Johnson shot, I believe that we've had a local death lately that was a result of that, but I can't prove that and never will be able to, so I'm not going to name names. But the fact is, every time you see somebody drop dead at a young age who's otherwise good health, first question that comes to mind, what vaccination did they get? You know, or did they? And a lot of times they did. So the fact is without belaboring this too much, I really think that you guys should direct our Department of Health to issue an apology to the population of the county here. And not only that, or maybe in addition or otherwise, at least offer an all clear for wearing a mask. I mean, at least come out as a Department of Health in their official capacity and say, look, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. They can say it however they want, but they should say today, you don't need to wear a mask any longer. It's just not necessary.
I think on something like that, it's completely understandable, and I will caucus with the board when I can, when we have a full board, and see what we might want to do on that. I'm typically more a forward-looking person. I would much prefer knowing that we did something that would not allow that kind of abuse, I call it abuse, happen again. It's going to be multiple parts there, including our part. There's always this question, and I'll call it sort of the Nuremberg trial syndrome, is I was only following orders. And as you know, at the time, I wasn't very happy about the following orders, because any good science approach is going to take a look at issues of causality mechanisms, and then any good political approach is going to take a look at my objective and the cost. And they just didn't line up. but we couldn't make headway in Olympia. And we are now in a situation where I really think most of the laws we have are unconstitutional. And the Constitution is just not honored, and I don't know what to do about that. I don't think we need to redo a constitution. We just need to hold the powers accountable. We all know the damage that has been caused. If you have specific suggestions, and you made one, the apology, I want to hear them because this is very dangerous what happened to us.
So 2 points. One, looking forward, it would be the medical data that is out is suppressed in many ways because they do not want to be held liable and responsible for the decisions they made. So from our standpoint, it would be interesting to know for all of the deaths in our local county, what percent of them had the shot. And you're not going to make any claims, but again, you go by demographics and just have an understanding of what that may be. Second subject, the Humane Society. I would present that we, the community at large, has paid for a number of vehicles and a number of things that they do have. If they're not going to use those, I would pursue those being made available for an alternative service in the community.
Did you want to comment on this? Yeah, one thing, the request for data is something we've been asking for a long time. We just haven't figured out how to enforce that. And I think we may be getting closer to enforcing that, but it should be easy. It's not.
You're not getting appropriate response from people we've already elected.
I do have one. I do have one question about our healthcare and does
Would you speak into the microphone?
okay, I have a question about the healthcare that we've received and the information we received concerning COVID and the shots and the medications. Now, I do know that I do not know if you have the power to do this, but I do know that all Peace Health physicians were told not to encourage the use of ivermectin. And there was one other, I can't remember the name of that one. However,
Remdesivir.
thank you.
No, I'm sorry. That's the one they were pushing. No, it's
The red, it starts with an R.
hydroxychloroquine.
Okay, correct. And the other one that you mentioned just is a total no-no. But what I'm saying is, do you have the authority or the influence to talk to the higher ups of Peace Health to let their doctors prescribe such medicines? Right now, they're not. They're told if you do, you will be fired. It's very blunt, and that is it. And do you have their wherewithal to influence them? Because I do know that a lot of people have asked their doctors for a prescription and they can't issue one. And I think they really should be able to. We've gone over the COVID. It's been proven ivermectin will not hurt you. And in fact, it was originally designated for people. Only when they found out it would be a dewormer for animals was it allocated for animals as well. But originally it was for human consumption. But now the doctors are not allowed to prescribe that. Do you have any influence at Peace Health to be able to?
I'll say, be careful what you wish for. The answer basically is no, but you probably don't want that power either. Now, unfortunately, everything is really entangled. Peace Health is There's a private agency. You don't want me to tell you how to live, and we shouldn't tell Peace Health how to live. What we can demand is much more closer to what the gentleman said about keeping our own house clean. We have structural problems. We've talked about this before. Any doctor has to be a member of the AMA. Why? Well, there are all the usual answers about licensing is good for you, but I think that all turns out not to be useful. Lawyers have to be members of the bar, and the judges are members, and it's a closed shop, and we're on the outside looking in. What we can demand is for the data and truth. The problem I
Okay.
have is, one, we typically don't get the data, and when we get the data, I can shoot holes through it because it just is it's just not at all scientific in any way, shape, or form. It's opinion, not the data. The way you beat this is the way the gentleman mentioned at the polls. You want to elect somebody who will talk to you and looks at you and says, verily, we're in the same boat. Let's take care of our boat.
Well, unfortunately, the hospital, as you said, is a private enterprise. And they are not elected. They're hired. The CEO is hired, and therefore we can get through them. We should be able to get through them through a media. However, that wouldn't happen at all with the daily news. So I don't know if we have a.
I mentioned we need to have our house clean, but if we are not able to keep our house clean, how do we expect anybody else to keep their house clean? Now, the trouble with the medical system, it is completely entangled, embroiled with
Politics.
Government mandates and other stuff. And that is where I say, you've got to clean out Olympia. You've got to get people out of that.
That's true.
Just as an example of a doctor with all the courage in the world, there's this pediatrician out of Spokane who was both a practicing pediatrician and an instructor at the WSU hospital. She was dismissed for her position on, vaccinating young children is probably not a good idea. The COVID vaccine.
I hear you, and I agree, but I see so much of this that it bothers me, especially on a proven medication. Again, if ivermectin had been something that was only given to animals, only used for the worming process, that would have been a different issue. But it had originally been for human consumption for different reasons. But I understand your answer. Thank you.
It kind of makes you ask, who really has the drug problem? Who really has the drug problem? Drugs are money in society.
Well, we're run by big pharma, so I'll let you go on that.
We've got just about a minute and a half, I'd say. Did you want to make any comments? No, Dennis? Fine. Okay, I'll at this point invite, looks like it's going to be Tracy. She's a glutton for fan. You'll have to be patient. You've got about a minute, a little less. And then afterwards, I hope some of you will stay around. I really think we want to just hear ourselves again about the mental health tax, and maybe Tracy will hang around and answer us any details you might have. Do I need to do a recess and go into the, just go right into it?
Right.
Yeah. Oh, come on, clock, tick. There we go. Okay, you're on.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tracy Jackson, Director of Building and Planning. I'm filling in for Office of Financial Management this morning. They're out of the office, so I'm sorry, you get me. In front of you today for a public hearing is the Title III funding for the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act. Basically, what that is money goes to the state, that comes back to us in a form of a tax, and the county commissioners get to decide. We solicit for projects and we get to decide what the commissioners want to fund. Cowlitz County has approximately $18,327 available for these Title III projects for this current year of 2023. They have to be obligated by September 30. The board authorized staff on May 16 to go out and solicit projects for the Title III funding for the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act. Proposals were due to OFM by June 1st. Eligible projects for these funds include activities under the Firewise Community Program, search and rescue, and other emergency services performed on federal lands. They could provide training costs and equipment purchases directly related to emergency services, and or development of community wildlife protection plans in coordination with the U.S. Secretary of Agricultural. Let's see. Cowlitz County, we received 2 proposals. Cowlitz County Fire 6 is requesting $7,000. Their goal is to, their goal is Mount St. Helens Area Response Project to provide emergency services to the SR 504 area east of Kidd Valley. And Fire 3 is requesting $20,061.69 to provide emergency services starting at milepost 20 on SR 504 up to and including the Johnston Ridge Visitor Center and the surrounding areas.
How much was the dollar amount?
Their request was $20,061.69. In June, as I stated, the board authorized OFM staff to advertise and publicize as required by the federal act. A 45-day comment period has been taken on review of these proposals. As of today, I believe there's no comments. I'm looking over to your clerk of the board. Yeah, there's no comments have been received. So let's see. I have both Fire 3 and Fire 6's proposals with me. Following the open public meeting, we'll recommend that the Board of Commissioners award $7,000 to Fire District Number 6 and the remaining $11,237 to Cowlitz County Fire District 3 of all the funds from the Title III Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act, and totaling our total of $18,237. So for that, I open up the public meeting. I have Bill here from Fire 6.
So by way of background, the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act is part of the National Association of Counties efforts to get the federal government to pay in lieu of taxes. They don't pay for any taxes to local government, but we do have certain functions that we perform, search and rescue, whether it's on federal lands or not. So even though it's a very small amount, it's based on the amount of acreage the federal government owns within Cowlitz County. We've had this program going now as long as I've been on the county commission. All relatively, I think we were at one point about $14,000. So it's moved up just a little bit. So so we have the two programs and the 2 proposals that fit the listed uses of what this money is supposed to go for. So our testimony today will be to hear from the public and hopefully from those requesting the funds to share with us how they're going to implement the money if they get it.
Could you add to that, where the money really originates?
Well, the money actually originates probably in our grandchildren because they'll be paying it. It's borrowed money the federal government has. Most funding from the feds are now borrowed dollars. So
Okay, let me rephrase.
ultimately, it's taxpayers' money.
Let me rephrase the question. Why is, of all the money the federal government spends, why is this $18,000? What's the rationale behind it?
Oh, it's based on the amount of acreage the federal government owns inside Cowlitz County. So some counties get a heck of a lot more money from these programs, but like I said, they don't pay local property taxes. So those employees that work on the national forests, they're not contributing money. So there are other programs that try to compensate for that a little bit.
So does it require the land to be of any use at all? Do they harvest trees? And that's a different source, just the existence.
At least as far as my understanding is the harvesting off of federal forests goes to help pay for Forest Service programs. And since they don't really harvest anymore, it's not a revenue producing agency. Used to be, but they don't get to harvest trees. No, this is an appropriation from Congress.
So this is just coming out of the general fund, you might
Yes.
say. And then is an acre in the Badlands of the Dakotas the same value as an acre here?
I believe the ratio is the same. It's per acre. All acres are the same, I think. And there have been a number of different formulas that have been.
And it has to be unincorporated area owned by the federal government.
It's
Yes.
acreage of federally owned property.
Okay.
So in Cowlitz County, of course, as we know, that's mostly almost completely national forest lands. There's a little bit of refuge, national wildlife refuges that Fish and Wildlife Service controls, but that's not very much.
How did the people that's before your time get to look at the Constitution and say it's okay for the federal government to own land?
So historically, the land ownership was originally created by the claims that the original explorers made on the eastern coast. And those claims then became legitimate legal title owned by the sovereign, the king or the duke, or the Duke of York, or whomever. And then there was an assumption that as we dealt with indigenous peoples, that we negotiated the rights to their land. And so you have both the right of discovery and claims, and then treaty law. So we have to understand if you're negotiating the right to land, then you get title to it. And so the federal government owning land is started that way. Through the adoption of the federal constitution, the agreement was made that the states would cede their claims to the land to the national government. That was all part of the approval of a new constitution. And then the Congress, part of the bargain was the Congress would agree to pay all the war debts from the Revolutionary War that the states had accumulated. So all part of a grand plan.
Okay, thank you. I don't know the exact procedures. I'd like to hear from the
All
folks.
you have to do is declare the public hearing open.
They can't speak now until I hit the gavel. Okay, it's a magic gavel. Public hearing is now open. Before Ms.
We have a representative from a
Fire six can come over here.
Oh,
fire district.
Yeah.
well, I'd like to just pursue your history question a little bit further. Is that our federal government, at least our leader in, supposed leader in the White House.
If I
does
could
the-
interrupt you, that was a non sequitur for the specific task here. I'd like to hear from you, but
Okay,
I'd
we'll
like
do
to-
constituent comments then.
So I'm with Cowlitz County Fire District 6. We're out of Castle Rock. Up until this year, we were the only staffed fire station that was closest to the Mount St. Helens area. As of late, Tootle has some staffing. It's limited, but that's why we're kind of splitting this because they're closer. And everything is based off of response. So if we don't go up there, we don't turn in a bill and we don't see any money, but this gives a way of reimbursing basically back to our taxpayers because they're the ones that are paying us to be there.
Last year, we had a similar split.
Yeah.
And you're okay with the way it's split?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
I just have a one small question and to you, I think. In prior years, how much activity did you do in search and rescue, fire, et cetera?
I think we were right at 15 calls for
50
last
calls.
year.
And that would have, okay, put that in money. I mean, you're asking for 20,000, I believe.
Yeah, we're at 7,000. We're right in there and it's basically, it's all based off of state set rates for if we send a medic unit or a fire engine, whatever we send up there, the rates are all pre-established.
For
for
the
what we get paid
distance, because
back.
I know I live in Castle Rock, so that would cover the distance
Right.
and the personnel.
Yeah.
Okay.
So pursue that a little bit further. How much did you get reimbursed last year?
I think it was around 60, 66 something seems to be the number that I remember, but
That sounds about right.
yeah.
It usually weighs about that same amount every year. This is a little bit higher allocation this year. We have a little bit extra funding. They usually go over. It's a reimbursable. So they are only recouping what our contract allows. This year, we're expanding a little bit so they can utilize more services.
So did you recoup 100% of what you were allocated last year?
Yes, we did. I don't know what Cowlitz 3 did, what Tootle did, but ours was.
Okay.
the difficulty with answering that question is it's money is fungible and so maybe a corollary question would be what happens if you don't get any of this $7,000?
Well, the money stays with you guys and I don't know what you do with it.
No, what happens with your fire district?
Oh, nothing. It just, we're not going out of district, so we don't have any expenses that are incurred for responding outside of our fire district.
So if there's a response need outside of the fire district, you just won't respond.
I guess I don't understand the question.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what the implication of 7,000
That way,
dollars is.
it's not considered a gift of public funds for us to be responding outside of our fire district. Because our taxpayers is what pays for everything that we do. When we respond outside, then that resource is not available for our taxpayers.
Right.
So that's just making them whole.
So based on what you said, and I have to admit to being confused, it wouldn't matter at all to you if you got the money or not.
If we didn't get the money, we wouldn't be responding up there. If it came to where the money disappeared, there would come a point when we would just say, I'm sorry, but if you're a tourist up in Mount St. Helens, getting an accident, or last week we had a guy riding one of those single wheel skateboard looking things, crashed and broke his collarbone. You don't have any help coming. We don't want to do that because ethically, I don't think that's the right thing to do, but we also don't really We're not required to go up there. We're just the closest services, so that's why we go up there.
Mhm.
I think that the feds should fund all this stuff before they put visitor centers and things like that, but they didn't ask me, so.
Well, when you figure out how to make any sense out of this, I got a place for you. There was another citizen that was looking like questions.
I've had mine answered.
Anybody else from the public or any other testimony? Fire District 3 want to say anything?
I don't know if they're online. I don't know.
Oh,
No hands raised.
They're not in here. I don't,
I see no hands.
Gary or Dustin.
It should be either Garrett or Gary. I know there's been a few years where we've done a joint
Yeah.
presentation, but this year we didn't.
Well, in the absence of any other testimony, I'll close the public testimony.
You need to use your magic hammer.
Yeah, I'm giving a pause, kind of like. Okay. The public testimony is closed. Magic hammer.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we award the Title I funding under the Secure Rural Schools and Community Self-Determination Act with $7,000 going to District 3. District 6, I knew I'd get the numbers wrong, and the balance to District 3 as recommended by staff.
Okay. There's been a motion to approve the Title III funding, and it has been discussed. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. That concludes that portion. And we open it back up for citizen comment, and thank you for your patience.
So just kind of following up on Commissioner Weber's comment on history is that we also, these are the federal lands that there's graciously getting money back through the printing money out of Washington DC to send to us. So anyway, the other is that I come from Eastern Washington. The Bureau of Reclamation also is federally Department of Resources, I believe, is state, correct?
Bureau of Land Management, BLM.
BLM
Yes,
is
yes.
state, okay.
That's
So
right.
anyway, my observations are again, that our federal leaders are pushing for more and more land being taken over by the federal government. Observation again is that that's two bad things. Number one, it takes it out of the tax rolls, and the federal lands in all forms are terribly mismanaged in terms of what private enterprise would do. So I am very disappointed in that process. Again, with property in Eastern Washington next to the Bureau of Reclamation, weed control, everything is terrible. Whereas under private enterprise and even some county oversight, the quality of management is very, very good. So I think some good training for our 87,000 new IRS agents would be to get out in the field and see what really happens.
Thank you. Yeah. Did you want to comment?
You did unveil my west side bias. I've lived here all my life rather than Eastern Washington. The Bureau of Land Management works with the Corps of Engineers to operate the recreational facilities in the dam, the reservoirs of the dam, particularly Roosevelt Lake behind Grand Coulee. But again, they're not as efficient as they could be. Yeah. By a long shot.
And
Other than They are able to manufacture cheap electricity. That's been an unqualified success. Those who love salmon probably disagree, but that's a whole different issue.
They haven't made a connection very well.
Yeah.
Between salmon.
Yep.
It's interesting when you talk about cheap energy. You
Ho-
know, most of our hydro-
Why don't you come up?
Hold on a second. Yeah, let's, but
It's, they can't hear you online.
yeah, before you do that, just a comment on the gentleman's comments there. The way we say things, the way we address things actually forms kind of a box to box our responses in. So for example, we don't say that person is homeless, we say that person is experiencing homelessness. That kind of makes it seem like that person has had an adverse effect from God coming down on them. Well, here, the same thing in your testimony, there was this thing, it takes land out of the tax roll, and I think we really should try to take out tax roll as a deciding factor, even influence anything. There's a fundamental, should the government own the land or not? And that it's subject to tax or not is a secondary issue, which we may tackle once we take care of the primary issue. Anyhow, just. So you're on.
So going back to history there with the history teacher, and you mentioned them making inexpensive hydroelectric power or energy. So how were the dams built? How was that financed? Do you know offhand? I know you can't know every part of history.
Bonds, federal bonds.
How was it funded though?
federal-
What happened? What important fact took place there by President Roosevelt? What did he do that funded all that stuff? How did he pay for that? Confiscated everybody's gold, right?
No.
They
There's-
confiscated everybody's gold during the Depression, and they used this gold money to finance our hydro energy systems that we got going now. All the big dams like Cooley was financed this way. You're shaking your head. No, I feel like you're more of an expert than me, but this is what my research has brought out.
Well, there's certainly, the government, we did go off the gold standard. I mean, that is definitely true. And, but you said that the government confiscated gold.
Yeah,
You
Roosevelt
can
did.
still own gold privately. You can purchase it on the market. I don't know where the confiscation was, but the important thing is those dams were built on with bonds. And the idea was that the ratepayers would eventually pay off those bonds. I'm not sure how far we've gone to actually paying off those bonds. I know when Ronald Reagan was elected president, one of the things he tried to do is to get the bonds paid off, and the customers of the power consumers appreciated the relatively low rates, which, you know, it still benefits us. I know that, you know, from family experience, my parents were snowbirds in Arizona. And they always said, we don't really fully appreciate how inexpensive our electricity is. It has gone up. I know it has gone up. And every time the power producers are ordered to diversify their mix of power production, every other alternative is more expensive than what we can get on the market for hydroelectric power.
That's true. So my question to you as history teacher is, so you're not aware that we confiscated gold? You don't know that part of it. You're not aware of that point in history. I don't want to hold you down because this is a side subject.
I don't know if that's just a terminology for when we went off the gold standard, because you couldn't, you know, we no longer have the gold certificates and use that for a species, but So
So you're not aware of
it may be a different name for the same process.
all right. I'll get more details that are more.
But you can't, but it's not
concise.
confiscated now. People are
That's
heavily,
true.
heavily,
can own
heavily
gold
invested
now.
in gold. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're referring to FDR's executive order 6002 or something like that. Anyhow, it starts with a 6. What it was is that you had a period of time in which you were required under penalties to turn your gold in return for certificates. In other words, Federal Reserve certificates. The really nasty thing is that price was set at $20 and I don't know, 3 dimes or something like that for an ounce of gold. When that window closed, then
And they jacked the rates up.
he shot the rate up to $35 an ounce. The interesting thing though is I think you would call that a form of confiscation, but because you got $20 with it, but you had no choice. As soon as your choice is taken away, I think that puts it to the other side. Then in 1971,
Nixon.
said, by the way, we're off. Prior to between 33 and 71, foreign governments could access our gold at $35 an ounce. That closed in 71. And there's a lot of discussion and there's really interesting. It's not a good sign.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to chase down that rabbit hole. I was trying to stick with how they funded the dams. Don't worry, I'll come back with a
good.
full report.
Appreciate that, Tim.
Well, don't go away. You seem to be in a good mood. Talk to us about the behavioral health tax.
Oh, well, okay, well, we're up. Thanks for saving me a trip. Yeah. Okay, so we all know taxation's theft, right? And we've kind of found out that this tax is providing money that goes to services that are no longer being used. I think the drug court is one of them. And the fact is that any less tax now is going to help everybody. And the people that are being helped by the tax don't seem to exist any longer. They have a fund, it seems as though, I don't know the millions, but there's some millions that already that aren't being used. And I don't know the exact number on that. But, you know, one of those things that this ties into is they're constantly going on about affordable housing, you know, and affordable housing, this and that. But the fact is do you live in an affordable community? And another thing that affects this is the fact that you have so many taxes, so many fees, so many different things going on. It raises the price of everything. And the fact is the community becomes unaffordable. Doesn't matter about how much your house costs, but which it affects that as well. But everything you do costs so much extra. I mean, look at the state we're in. We pay the highest gas prices of anybody in the country now, you know, and that's one cost there that's like that affects everything else.
Goes back to elections.
The price of fuel affects everything else. And so we got the highest gas price in the country. Then why would it be a surprise that we have the higher housing prices, higher food costs, higher clothing costs, higher costs to get our HVAC systems worked on? All this stuff, it goes right around the price of fuel. And so I'm just saying, this is a really small tax. 1% of 0.5% of some percent, right? I mean, it's
0.1%.
And when you say it like that, it's like, well, gee, that's just not very much of a tax. You know, how much could that possibly affect the people around? My point about it is that the tax doesn't seem to be doing what it's meant to do in the first place because things have changed. And why don't we make our community just 1% of a half of a percent of a percent easier to live here by eliminating this tax or just letting it sunset? You're not really eliminating it. You're just letting it sunset.
So Tim, one of the interesting things about whether or not this is an affordable community is the incredible recent increase in home construction, both multiple family complexes as well as single family homes. It's been pretty incredible. And when I travel around the county, I keep track because I know how valuable new construction is from taxes. But in addressing this whole issue of affordable housing, I was astounded when the first time I drove around Branch Creek Drive. You know where that is?
Mm-mm.
It's south of Ocean Beach Highway, west of Mount St. Helens. There's about 150 single-family homes being built.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I have occasion to travel out Pacific Way, and I noticed about a year ago what looked like an entirely new apartment complex going in, and it turns out it's off of Finch Drive, which is in the Robbins edition.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, a huge number of apartments there.
Yeah.
Travel out Ocean Beach Highway, that you can see they're building like mad. Lexington, there's the new townhouse subdivision. The principal of Lexington School expects 100 kids to come from that location starting next year, pretty much filling up that school. That was supposed to be capacity for quite a few years more. Developments around Castle Rock are popping. Even out on Hall Road, there are single family homes going in.
Mhm.
So why would they be building in an area that's too expensive? So something is different here that is maybe attracting folks from a more expensive Clark County. My hope is, in addressing this whole affordable housing thing, is that the market will make adjustments. We've got the older stock, the older homes, the older apartments. They're not going to be able to continue to command really high rents that are almost equivalent to house payments now, just because the supply now has jumped or is in the process of jumping. And so people will be able to move around and find more affordable housing, but it's all relative. And it's just, I don't know what it was, and I'm not enough of a financial guru to understand, but there's been an enormous investment of primarily private money to build additional housing. The county has done a very, very small, tiny job contributing to the construction of affordable housing. We've given away about $1.5 million to 3 different projects that try to keep rates really low for folks. So it'll be subsidized housing, not government owned. It'll still be, privately run, not City of Kelso or City of Longview is not going to be running it. So we're doing what we can on a limited basis, but there are far more new construction going on all over the county. And that gives at least me pause for optimism that we're going to be able to start addressing more of the housing needs. Does that mean an elimination of homelessness? No, because so much of that is tied to an economy that does not guarantee jobs, that people get laid off, and that's huge number one cause of homelessness. The second biggest one is almost guaranteed. Every family that goes through divorce, one or the other couple is going to become homeless because they can't afford to keep mortgage payments and so on. And you've got the people with the untreated mental illness that really get the bottom of the stick. And we've talked about that in our public meetings, and we're beginning to recognize that at least for a portion of the chronic homeless, safe and secure housing needs to be tied in with their commitment to get treatment. So I see some improvements in that whole area of affordable housing, but why is it that all of a sudden the last 4 or 5 years, this tremendous increase in construction is going on if we're so doggone expensive? I don't know the answer to, I'm asking that question. what happened.
Yeah. if
I
you-
think a lot of it had to do with interest rates plummeting for a while. But I also think, as simple as it may be, the construction of the bridge to Lexington, connecting Lexington with the freeway, made
Yeah.
Lexington as a community much more accessible to folks from Clark County. I hope there's been enough housing that will more than meet the need from the folks coming up from Clark County, that our lower income families can still get access to housing. I'm
So,
hopeful.
Well, you know, an
I'd like to
interesting.
peel, I'd like to
Go ahead.
peel this onion back a little bit because we began with
Mental
behavioral
health
But
yeah.
so let me
Mhm.
peel this back a little bit. Remember, I admonished about how we use language to sort of frame the box we want to respond to. To fit in. So affordable housing is a balance between whatever jobs are available and whatever housing is available. And the government typically likes to try and fix those things, but it can't. The Oklahoma Dust Bowl is a perfect example. People didn't just stay there and say, somebody's got to pay my rent here. Somebody's got to feed me. They actually got up and moved. Sometime between then and now, we've decided that people are entitled to live where they would like. If you buy that, let me tell you, I would like a penthouse in Seattle. And I think you ought to help me out with that. One of the problems with rent here, yeah, we spent $1.5 million or so on adding housing stock. That's the right way to spend it. The wrong way to spend the $9 million was in subsidizing rent and utilities. On average, anybody who receives subsidy for rental was getting about $863 a month. And landlords have no incentive at all to drop the price. You're correct. As this new housing comes in, we will find it's a non-linear response. That is to say, it's threshold. A landlord won't leave an apartment empty because it's no income at all and he's got a sunk cost. So if there's no subsidy in it, the price will drop. Lots of entanglement. But now back to the health to the thing. You said the drug court was ineffective. We've been having hearings on the expenditure of this tax, and I think that was key for us to try to let you see so you can help us guide and understand. Without going into too much detail, my total assessment of after hearing everyone there that probably our assuming we are where we are, and not that I can start stuff back and fix a lot of entanglements, drug court actually is probably not an unreasonable use of the money compared to the throughput of the drug court versus the throughput of Camp Alabama 2, AKA Hope. And you'll see that the drug court is actually fairly effective, and the product at the end is a superior product. Now I'm casting some aspersion there and saying some things that really are a challenge for me to look into and for others to look into. The recently we were in negotiations with the labor unions for the county, and an assessment of a modest cost of living adjustment throughout the county employees puts us in the hole for another 2 million, another one. I didn't bring it with me.
We'll ballpark that one.
Yeah, it's $1 million plus, and if we go to where
Let's be careful. We're not negotiating terms in public.
right. Now I'm just saying
That's-
we're facing
General terms.
we're facing trouble right to start with. So then part of the discussion is if we value some of the things that are being done with the mental health tax, do we have the means to draw it out of the general fund? The answer is something's got to give. And that is what I think is the valid discussion we need to have. And it will continue to have because we need all three commissioners on that. I don't know what else I could say, but anyhow, now, thank you.
Yeah, sure. You know, my observation on that tax is it doesn't look like it does anything. I've heard the court make its presentation here some time back, and not the last one, but before that, it didn't seem to pan out to me. And that's when it was functioning. It doesn't seem to even function now because there's no penalty for being in possession of drugs. And
But
I don't want to tie up too much more time here because we got.
So I think you would probably appreciate some of the information we heard. Every Monday morning, we get an update on jail census. And we've been watching the jail census creep back up as it should be happening. As law enforcement agencies are changing their tactics and their strategies, prosecutors are redesigning charges. So more people are beginning to be charged with drug-related crimes. It's just not possession. And that's what they relied on for so much of the time. And that was that possession law that was ruled unconstitutional. Well, it took a while to figure out, well, you know, we've still got all these people ripping people off. Now the bulk of the drug-related crimes are being prosecuted for burglary and, you know, and theft, which gets to a little bit more difficult to prove, but they're starting. So as those charges increase in numbers and severity, that will then lead to more, you know, if they're eligible for drug court, again, up to the prosecutor, see what kind of a risk they are, whether they would benefit from the drug court program, then they enter that program. And we've seen numbers go up in that program as well. But you're absolutely right. A year ago, I mean, all of us were saying, you don't have anybody participating because they've all been released and there's no charge. That's beginning to turn around. That's good news.
That's good to know, but so is there some part of this mental health tax that applies to something else besides the drug court? Is that strictly what mental health tax goes to? Or
So
are there some other useless
so about
programs
half
that
of
aren't
that-
paying out?
half of that tax is going to the jail to deal with those who are addicted to drugs and those who have mental health problems. Programs that had not been part of the services offered by the jail. Dealing with those with addictions, if they are on a medically assisted treatment program, that's usually paid for by Medicare, Medicaid, or insurance. Turns out if you're on Medicaid, you lose that coverage when you're in custody of somebody who's got deep pockets, which the government is. And so they would no longer have coverage for medically assisted treatment. And so part of this money now is going to help provide medically assisted treatment for.
So we're paying taxes for some Medicaid, that
Right.
you supposedly would get in the future if you're a young person. But because so now you're going to pay for something twice, it sounds like to me. Right
Well,
there.
not paying for it twice because they lose coverage.
Well,
which
they're going to
means
lose
then-
coverage,
then
but
the
still, then you
jailers-
got to have a pickup
So
program.
then the
right?
jailers, all of a sudden, they're operating a withdrawal clinic with the violence that's involved with that and the horrible behaviors that go on. So our jails are not designed to be either mental health treatment facilities or addictions centers. And so the medically assisted treatment for those that fit at least get stabilized. So that part is, and then the mental health counselors being available is also, it makes sense because they're not supposed to be mental health clinics and they get turned into that. So.
Well, again, I feel a little nervous complaining about this tax because I've kind of seen all the people that come out for it and they're all very powerful people. I'm not suicidal. I don't have suicidal thoughts. happy in my life, right? So just in case, just know that these guys, I think they'd have the power to get rid of me. And I feel like I'm just one little squeaky voice here, but this tax from my practical standpoint of just being an old guy looks like a waste. And taxation is theft. We live by these words all the time. Certain taxes I can see to some degree, but this is just too far out there for my personal taste. And I don't see the use of it. I think that they've got some millions set up, right? I mean, how much is it? It's some millions. What's the number? 5 million, 7 million,
It's not that much.
No.
1 million?
Tracy, do you have numbers that you want to report on that?
0.1% is generating about a little over
About 2
2
million a
something like
year,
that.
yeah.
It's gone up. I mean, obviously, sales taxes response to inflation, but
Yeah.
Here's Tracy.
Hi, Commissioners. We have about a little over $2.5 million a year that's
A
collected.
year, but I mean, isn't there a pool of money right now sitting aside that didn't get used before? I mean,
It's not very much because a lot of that goes to the staffing cost to pay for all of these programs. Most of it, literally, as it comes in, it's already allocated to go out.
all right.
There
Yeah,
is an
there
ending
has-
fund, but it's to keep the fund whole.
So we.
But there is some.
As you would expect. Okay, well, it's not as much as I thought. But the fact is you've created an administration and you've created a tax to pay for the administration. That's what it looks like to me. And, there's been other programs besides, like drug court is like something, I don't know when it came along. Long time ago, I got in some trouble and I had to go through a program and it sucked and I had to pay for it myself and it cured me because it was awful. And this free ride through drug court, I don't know. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me. None of this tax seems to make any kind of sense to me other than there's some office over there in the Justice Building where they've got some computer stuff and maybe a staff member sitting around there typing away. But I mean, it's like, what the hell is this good for? And the fact is that I think you guys really should just let it sunset. Just let it go away. Ease up on the taxes and we'll all be happier.
A question for either Tracy or my colleague. I tried to read the RCW last night and it's really hard language to understand and there are amendments after amendments or changes on it. 0.1%, I read someplace where I think we can go up to 0.5%. Is that true?
Not on that one. I don't think that's expandable. I think it's just the 1/10.
Okay, what
Other taxes we can adjust. but
Right,
They haven't. I may be wrong. They may have changed the law recently, but I.
Oh,
never remember.
the law actually changed. There's a superseding something rather July 23rd, I think I think we're out of session, but that was the document I read. In any event, let me ask it on the other side, is 0.1% what we either do 1.1% or don't do any at all?
I don't, I think I was out in the audience when the previous commissioners approved that. Seems like it's up to 1%. So I think there's
0.1%.
Yeah, 0.1%. I have to double check that too.
Yeah.
wanted to make an
So
adjustment.
Tracy, do you know?
I believe Dennis is correct. It's the up to 1%.
Up to
And it's
0.1%.
It's a combination of all of the different taxes have to equal up to the other number you were speaking of. It's
Oh,
the
okay, so-
combination of all of them, yes.
Okay, and where do we stand on that? Are we at the limit?
I'd have to go and look. I haven't looked for a while. It's on the MSRC website. I'd have to look.
Yeah, I looked there last night and I don't remember the numbers, but again, it was to me very confusing, which is part of the problem. Putting finger in the dike here means that we got a leak elsewhere and okay, in Tracy, do you remember if we can go to below 0.1%?
I believe you can, but it's just gonna, it's just gonna round up. What are you gonna do? 0.75 of 1% of a sales tax?
Yeah,
It would just get really messy.
yeah.
You could do a
Understood.
0.5%, that you would just be collecting less, and then you have staffing costs that the general fund's gonna have to absorb.
Okay,
I think it's a budgetary workshop discussion that OFM, the board, and then all of the mental health recipients of that money probably need to, those departments need to have a bigger discussion.
agreed. In fact, we've started that bigger discussion because on Tuesday you may feel this way and on Wednesday you may feel differently. And we're really asking for people to provide input and for staff to provide us data that is so clean and incontrovertible that it can help us make a decision. For this purpose, I think the public needs to understand that this is not as simple as taxing anything that moves or that doesn't move. We have someone at the table.
So I'll continue. You speak of mental health tax. I'd like to more refer to a mental health incentive, and that the tax should be forming some sort of incentive for positive results. And you just, in history, you referred back to the Dust Bowls and the construction of the Columbia Basin Irrigation Project and things like that. People took a choice to move to locations to get jobs, to work, and did sweat equity in working our way through life. When I want to feel sorry for myself, I'll read some of the biographies of the people that went to Grand Coulee Dam and other places, or Arizona. They lived in a shiplap shack where the snow and the sand blew through it. It makes the little houses down at Camp Alabama look like a penthouse. What people chose to do as a mental health incentive for moving on in life. So I'd like it kind of to be called an incentive, rather how we convert it in that way. Then you talk about history. Okay, we have an experiment, and the city of Longview calls an experiment down there, advanced experiment with Camp Alabama, Camp Hope, whatever you want to call it. We need factual data on what the results of that are. The reports that we see at city council are quasi responsive. They are not identifying the true costs. There are a lot saying is that of the 50 in, we've had a tremendous turnover. There's people moving into permanent housing, but that permanent housing is incentive housing again, that CAP and other agencies are setting up, creating some kind of fictitious permanent housing. So the city of Longview will be coming back to us and to you again for the next incentive program when this one ends for monies. And so I challenge and ask you to get with recognize that that's coming and ask for true data on what's coming out of Camp Hope. And again, there's been a bunch of studies on what were the how did they select the people to go into
Ron,
that?
you keep using it interchangeably. You're talking about Hope Village or Camp Alabama.
It's the same thing.
Camp Alabama is gone. It's a parking lot. Right.
Okay, you're just a correction of terms, what we call it. It was Camp Alabama. It's Camp Hope in the same spot that Camp Alabama was. Same spot, same location. And
But a much cleaner environment.
for a handful of people. But not the 100 and plus others that are still out surrounding that have come to build it, and they will come. We've seen that and we know that. And whatever happens at the end of this year, we've got two major problems. Either it's going to find funding for some sort of continuation and have to move somewhere, or it's going to cease, and now we'll have everybody out on our streets. So you and the city of Longview, and we have placed ourselves between a rock and a hard spot in a future decision here at the end of this year. So we need to face up to it and ask the city for true data on what is the true success of the experiment.
We have a hand from Shannon up. Did you want to follow?
Yeah, I just want
directly?
to make one small comment on Ron's delivery.
How small is it?
we-
About like that?
Very small. We know personally people that can look into the compound, whether you can call it whatever you want. There are no more than 19 of those houses being occupied. I think that's that kind of shows you that it is not being used.
Could you begin again? I wasn't able to hear you well enough.
We know a person who has daily ability to see in the compound. Then you can call it whichever you want. There are no more than 19 of those houses being used. So their facts and figures that I heard about are definitely falsified and not true. And now this person works in an area that he can see this daily. It's not something he saw just once. It is something he sees continually, and it is not being used the way they say it is. Therefore, their figures cannot be correct.
So let me be sure I understood. Of the 50 homes, 19 are occupied,
Correct.
and that's from someone who actually gets access to
Sees
the camp
them daily. So
from
he
inside the
knows.
camp.
Outside of the camp, looking in, he can see them daily. And where I'm not going to tell names because I don't want anything coming back and having them harassed because he's a friend, but he's very upset because they've had issues, and to see the false statements of saying how great this was and how much it's helping people when it's a total falsified, because again, there are not that many that are, maybe when it gets cold and starts raining, maybe they'll come back. But right now, if they're being that false on the success rate that they're having, I will not believe what they say, even when it's full, because are they going to stop lying at that point in time? I doubt it. And again, a person will only change their habits when they have a need or desire to. And I believe that right now, giving them housing, food, and clothing, it sounds good, it is good, but in this instance, it is enabling. It is enabling their drug or alcohol condition. And it is, honestly, you need to go back to a working program where they are going to be counseled and taught maybe a skill, have a marketable skill. If they want to change, they will go for those. Then you start giving them what they need. And as far as substances, like housing and clothing,
Yeah.
but they have to show a need. And right now, with enabling, they don't even want to have that. They're out somewhere, and again,
That's
this
where,
is not working. This
Yeah.
is not working.
that's where drug court has it hands down over that. So go ahead, Shannon. You're still muted, Shannon. Shannon must have momentarily stepped away. Shannon, if you're there, flash your hand on and off, and that way we know that you have an audio problem. Okay, Larry, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, we're talking about history lessons today, so I'd like to bring everybody's attention to a book called The Tragedy of American Compassion. One of the things you'll quickly learn is this country went from helping the deserving to entitlements for everybody. And that started, the socialists have been at this for a long time. They finally arrived to where now just because you breathe, you're supposed to get something for free from the people that actually work. That's the overriding elephant in the room. That's this whole Camp Alabama version 2, Dennis, is all about. So until we get enough people in office that understand the big picture, we're not going to get anywhere. We're just playing games. I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I did yesterday that really helped me understand the bigger picture of what's happening to the overall economy. I don't eat out too often, but yesterday I happened to be in Portland and I stopped at an Elmer's restaurant, middle of the road restaurant. I had 1 egg, 2 strips of bacon, 2 French toast, a fruit cup, 7-Up, and a cup of coffee. That cost me $35. That included a $5 tip to a worker that I've gone out of my way to increase my tips because of those people. So how does that relate to Cowlitz County? Well, if you go to a local restaurant in Kelso, who I've gone to for many, many years, that restaurant now is only half full. They don't even maintain the shrubs in front of the place anymore. They're all, a lot of them are dying, the garbage all over the place. That is a precursor of what's coming to this county. Now, how that affects you guys or affects all of us is going to be in sales tax and B&O tax. That restaurant cannot keep going with 50% or less capacity. So it's just a matter of time before that place is going to shut down. So, and then you talk about, I mean, I'm not wealthy or I'm not poor, but now I'm going to be thinking twice about whether to eat a snack or spend $35 for a simple breakfast. So, I mean, this is what's coming. And it's going to be disastrous for the working people and the lower class working people in this county when these businesses start shutting down. And so, I mean, that's what I saw coming. That kind of reminds me of, I don't buy new cars very often, but a number of years ago, I couldn't believe that a new car cost $15,000. I think the last one I bought before that was $2,500. Well, things are not looking good. One of the passages in the book that I just talked to you about, and it relates to a comment that Tim made about these agencies are just pushing paper. There was one individual in New York that wanted to get involved. He quit a good paying job to get involved in helping what we called the homeless or whatever it was back then. He lasted 2 months because all he ended up doing was pushing forms around to satisfy the requirements of whatever bureaucracies were pushing these programs. So, I mean, there is no future in maintaining all these bureaucracies that we've got. We've got to break through that, and we've got to get down to what traditionally worked was people helping people. And if they weren't willing to work, if they were able-bodied and weren't willing to work, then they didn't get the help. So that's part of what we got to overcome.
As usual, you speak clearly and with common sense. Let me add one other forecast. We've been recently exposed to the number of shoplifting events at kind of, let's call it the box stores, the big stores. Eventually, they will not be able to keep their doors open. So the future now shows that stores will close and all your shopping will be done through Amazon or something like that. It'll all come in the mail or UPS, and you'll have to figure out how to put a strong box at your house where a package can be entered but not retrieved without a key. It's not the way we ought to have to live, but it's fairly clear that that's in the works.
Well, you're absolutely right about the box stores. I mean, we have one of the members that I'm associated with that has reported in the last couple of weeks about a number of incidents at one of the big box stores where people were just freely coming out of the stores with stuff that they have stolen. She called it to their attention. The employees just shrugged their shoulders. Management would do nothing about it. So the norm in our community is quickly shifting from doing the right thing to just shrugging your shoulders and looking the other way. And this is directly related to the policies in the city of Longview, specifically to the number of police that they don't have available.
So Shannon, would you want to try it again? Oh, there
I
you are.
do. Good morning. Yes? Okay. I kind of want to touch base on the last three people that spoke. One of the Flo, I believe, said that they're going somewhere when talking about the people that are at the village. Here's the deal. We're seeing them in the Highlands. You've heard me talk about that before. There's been an uptick ever since the opening of this new village. We have an increase of sex offenders, and particularly one that is not just a sex offender, but he's one that has committed murder. So we have him in our neighborhood. There is an increase of mental illness that is going around in our area, because it's a lot of these people are, I mean, it's a given. I have been told that I cannot walk my dogs by myself. I have to go with my husband, or with my husband and my son, or with my son. There's other people in the Highlands. We're going backwards. We're not going forwards. We're going backwards. We started to have a moment where we were starting to feel a little bit of relief, because there was something that was happening. We have neighbors that are frustrated. They're frustrated because of a lot of the people that are getting exited out of the village that you aren't hearing about. Well, they're coming into our neighborhoods. They are camping in our alleys. They're camping on industrial way areas. There's little encampments there. They're camping all around. And they're trying to take they have no shame. They have no shame. And we're just told that everything is hunky-dory. And then you have the powers that be that are running the village, whether it's city or it's Salvation Army, that sit there and they say at their meetings that the Highlands are happy campers. Not everybody is part of that little Good Neighbor Act. So outside of the Good Neighbor Act, that's where all the stuff is going down. There needs to be an incentive. There needs to be an incentive for people to do better. There needs to be an incentive for people to get help. There needs to be an incentive for people to do more for themselves legally. Do you realize how much it costs for a vet bill for a dog or a cat? These people have it free. They get free dog food, free vet care, free whatever they need for their animals. Somebody even has a duck. I don't get free vet care for my animals. My husband works his hiney off. I volunteer. I work at the center. I am there sometimes 8 hours a day. Every day of the week almost. I'm not there on Sundays unless I need to be. And I see them hanging out at the park. Sometimes when our children from the neighborhood are there with Parks and Rec. No, the Highlands are not happy with what's going on. There needs to be incentive. There needs to be something placed forward that this will stop. You've heard me before. And I'm going to say it again. Not in my neighborhood. This is my community. I love this community. This is the hill that I'm going to stand on. And I am going to stand here and I'm going to protect every one of them in any way that I have to. I will stand here and I will be heard, whether it's at a BOCC meeting, whether it's at a city council meeting, or whether it's talking to people on the street. This is ridiculous. I had 4 homeless people with their bikes and their trailers, and I don't know what, if it was a dune buggy or what, but they blocked me from the road. I couldn't get to the center. I had to wait 20 minutes for them to get out of the way. That's ridiculous. And now they're going around and they're just, it's increasing. And we have the behavioral health units, but that's all that Councilmember Strobel is concerned about, is the behavioral health units. Okay, so what's this tax going to do? What's this tax going to do for us? That's what I want to know. You want to do a mental health tax. Do you know how much it costs to live in the Highlands? The house on the left to me is $1,500 a month. The house on the right of me is $1,450. Go down to Beach Street where those brand new apartments are. For a 1-bedroom apartment, it's $1,500. For a 2-bedroom, it's $2,000. In the Highlands. Meanwhile, we have to deal with the riffraff that's spilling out from the village. I'm not going to call it Hope Village because there is no hope right now. And definitely no hope pouring out from there. While people like me, people like Michael Peterson are defending it. And people like Hillary Strobel are wanting to defund our police and want more of the behavioral health units. And then we have the left side sitting there calling us the crazy ones. It's time to do something. It's time to pull up our big boy pants, our big girl pants, and do something. No more just, oh, we're going to do a mental health tax. Okay, what's that going to do? What is that going to do? I'm tired of hearing, we're going to do a tax. We're going to do a tax. Okay, last time Longview talked about taxes because they spent. Meanwhile, we're out here picking up the pieces, picking up the trash, because big boys and big girls can't figure out what they're going to do, and we're dealing with all the riffraff. Not just people stealing stuff from yards, but actual sex offenders, murderers, people that are beating the crap out of people. That's what we're dealing with. And I am tired of it, and I will stand this ground, and I am going to speak my voice.
Okay. Thank you, Shannon. A lot to be said there. Let me see if somebody else wants to come up, or I could monopolize the air a little bit too. I think you make excellent observations.
We keep talking about the word incentive, but I think that we need to move to the point to where we no longer have any tolerance for all of those that are abusing and taking advantage of our systems. Yes, there are people that we need to offer incentives to that have a desire to improve their lives or are willing. But we have that whole other side, which is totally messing up the whole deal. And not only should we talk about no tolerance, but we have a whole society now that enables this kind of behavior. And we have to have no tolerance for the enablers of this poor behavior that we're seeing. And I'm talking about the people that are criminals, the people that chose the lifestyle that somebody else is supposed to pay for their lifestyle. All of that has to stop.
Dennis, based on this showing, I would guess that people don't want that mental health tax.
Well, I know one person has definitely said they don't want to keep it.
Yeah. Well, one issue related to the tax is the sunset clause, and I definitely am in favor of all laws having a sunset clause, even laws for homicide. Imagine if the legislature had to spend its time reinstating or repeating laws that are basically common sense, like thou shalt not. Yeah, I think you know what I'm going to say. So they would stop a lot of idiot laws that come about. And one thing you mentioned that I really do like is the entry into drug court now is based on aggression in the public. That is to say, there is a victim there, a breaking and entering victim, a mugging victim. I don't know any of it. I mean, do I really care if somebody drinks a beer in their house or does whatever else they want? I don't think so. I care about not enabling them. I care about protecting the public at large, and we're not doing that very well. And that ties into Shannon's statements that whenever we explore things, we'll get all these stories about excuses and why this Camp Hope is a new pilot program and everything like that. It was pretty clear from the start. It was same old stuff, SOS. The proof always is just step back and just ask. And Shannon says things aren't as good in the Highland as they were not very long ago. And they weren't too good back then either. So we're just slipping away. You don't have to have all these explanations and details. We are very clever at making stuff up. The floor is yours.
Okay, two things is that, Dennis, you mentioned observing all of the new housing and things going in. That's very interesting, but when we have housing in the Highlands and area at $1,500 a month just to live in, and we know that these houses and these apartments going in are very expensive. And as the statistic, or at least the information I hear nationally, is that more than half our population is underwater already in paying their bills each month. So we do have a significant challenge ahead of us, even if the places are occupied, if the people, good working people, can't even afford to be in those. Secondly, is that we've been paying taxes and taxes and taxes for many years. I think it's time that you seek and get reports from all of these agencies that we have locally, and what is the positive results of those fees that you've been dispersing, not just paying for people sitting at a desk and shuffling paper, but what are true results that we, the citizens paying these taxes, can at least see some progress, or if nothing else, at least holding water where we are. No reports, no money is what I would say in your seat.
I would modify that, no quality reports.
So, Mr. Chairman, I do need to let you know that I am speaking before the Longview Pioneers Club, and I have a PowerPoint presentation, and I still have to get it transferred to a thumb drive. In other words, I'm going to leave in about 10 minutes. So
yeah, I think I don't see any other hands up. I want to thank everybody, including you. As frustrating as these conversations might be, I think they're really necessary. But thank you, everybody. Without seeing objections, I close the meeting.
Thank you.